This video is sponsored by Skillshare. The first 1,000 people who use the link in my description will receive a 1-month free trial to Skillshare Premium. Stick around to the end to learn more. As you may know from watching New British Canon, 90s Britain was consumed by Britpop. But running parallel to this, featuring louder guitars, more working class backgrounds, and championed by Kerrang, was Brit rock. Awkwardly wedged between these groups, Skunk Anansie evaded all classification. Led by their physically slight, yet vocally colossal lead singer, Skin, the band were a riotous mix of hard rock, dub, and punk. Their social consciousness made it so they were always fighting an uphill battle, but their defiant music and powerful live presence couldn't be ignored. This is New British Canon, and this is the story of Weak. Skunk Anansie were formed in London in early 1994. Singer Deborah Skin Dyer and bassist Richard Cass Lewis had previously been in the group Mama Wild, but after a couple years of no label interest and finding their sound too soft, they moved forward with Skunk Anansie. I was brought up with heavy bass and drum reggae, so when I got in a band it had to have that bass and drums searing your eyebrows off. I was never going to be into indie. Named after a combination of the famously black and white New World mammal, reflecting the band's multicultural lineup, and the trickster spider of Ghanaian folklore, the quartet were filled out by Martin Ace Kent on guitar, and Robbie France on drums, with lyrical ultra-low bass, hulking drums, and barbed wire guitar inserts. Skunk Anansie's sound was at odds with what was happening at the time. Musically, their love of heavy, in-your-face bands like Black Sabbath, the Sex Pistols, Nirvana, and Tool was not shared by the trendy, nostalgia-seeking Britpop movement. Said Skin back in 1995, "We're trying to push it out a bit, and be original about our sound. We hate fucking retro shite. Its great bands are harking back to 20 years ago, but we were into the Sex Pistols and Black Sabbath. Instead of spying what they've done, we're taking it a step further and creating our own style. The characters in the band are all very different, and that's what makes it work together." Skin stood out from the average Britpop singer, being that she wasn't a middle-class student type, wasn't white, and wasn't straight. Plus, with the ability to go from guarded whisper, "Why does your world keep burying?" to full-bodied scream, all while affecting defiance and passion into every note. She is often stated as the most versatile voice in British rock since Robert Plant, combined with a stage manner that commanded attention. But the press were quick to label her as unapproachable, as an angry black lesbian. I may seem scary on stage, but I don't walk around being scary 24 hours a day. I'm not that one-dimensional. I know I'm aggressive and in people's faces, but what's scary is you have someone like me doing that. If it was just a white guy, no one would be scared. It's the old black lesbian thing. She's got a bold head, she's hard. It's almost taking away my femininity. To reclaim her female energy and to oppose Britpop, Skin would dub Skunk's music as clip pop. Their live reputation made the Skunk Anansie name. By their second gig, they had half a dozen A&R men scouting them out, but their politics would be a constant point of discussion and a detriment to their major label prospects. Their fuming, bigot-kicking songs criticizing raising children to be racist on Little Baby Swastika. So small, so innocent, so young, so delicately done, grown up in your poison. The crass commercialism of modern religion on Selling Jesus. They want your soul and your money, your blood and your bones. While using anti-racism rhetoric for style points on Intellectualize My Blackness. He tried to Not one major record company in the country was interested in signing this band. They called us racist because of Intellectualize My Blackness. No, really. The ideal marketing concept is 4 white blokes. That hasn't changed. In July 1994, 5 months after forming, they signed with One Little Independent, home of Björk. A couple of months later, the label set them up in the studio, and Skunk Anansie began work on their debut. Paranoid and Sunburnt was recorded at Great Linford Manor in autumn 1994. For producer, the group settled on Sylvia Massey, who just finished working on Tool's Undertow album. But being that it was the first time the group had ever been in the studio, Skin especially was faced with disabling nerves. Additionally, she faced pressure to be perfect from her bandmates that escalated the situation. People kept saying to me every day, "Your vocals have got to be amazing." I was like, I've never recorded an album before, but I got so caught up in my head about how good I was or had to be. I think I acted too confidently, and people around me thought I could handle it, but I couldn't. Feeling overwhelmed but not willing to give up without getting something done, Skin forced herself to record the vocal for 100 Ways to Be a Good Girl before taking a few days to mentally regroup.
I know 100 ways to be a good girl.
The uncertainty in her voice can be heard on the finished track.
You flew into a rage, 'cause that's everything you know.
To remedy her hesitance, the band tried to ape the feeling of a live show, where Skin was most at home. There was no audience and we didn't know how to get the vibe, so we made our own creative vibe by dressing up the whole room. We put posters all over the walls and rubbish and crap all over the floor, and in the middle of the room was the vocal chamber, where I had all my lyrics scrawled all over the walls. And that was where I sang. It was crazy. While on tracks like Selling Jesus and I Can Dream, Skin would present an aggressive, confident persona. Weak showed her in a more exposed state. I was practicing chords on the acoustic guitar I'd bought with my record deal money, just playing E minor, D and C over and over. Then I started singing along.
Lost in time, I can count the words.
The whole song is those 3 chords, with a 4th in the chorus. When I took it to the band, I told them, I've got this B-side, but we all worked on it and put in the middle 8.
In this tainted soul, in this weak young heart, am I too bad for you?
And that's how the song was born. The boys gave Weak its groove, sexiness and power. The song was inspired by a traumatic experience Skin had growing up in Brixton. When she was 16-17, she was dating a guy 10 years older than her. After a particularly fierce row over whether she was allowed to enter a dance competition, he punched her in the face. This was the first time any man hit me like that, and I knew it must also be the last. I knew that I had to make a choice. I saw it all laid out in front of me and decided I wanted no part of it. Marriage to him was not going to be my life. Though he had begged in tears for her forgiveness, Skin escaped to Middlesbrough University to be rid of him, but for the most part she blocked out the experience until 9 years later when she was writing Weak.
So here sits a bloody mess, tears fly home.
The track delves into her vulnerability in the situation, but also that she wasn't going to waste any energy on him and the dead-end life staying with him promised.
Weak as I am, no tears for you.
She had escaped and was all the better for it, but in the verses she was still conflicted.
If I open my heart, there'd be no space for air, 'cause I wanted you.
The last minute is where Weak comes together as an anthem of defiance.
Weak as I am, weak as I am.
With the music at its heaviest, Skin's voice no longer restrained and whispered, but soaring unopposed. It was a vulnerable moment that turned into a moment of strength. It was basically me saying, I'm never going to be hit by anyone ever again. Paranoid and Sunburnt hit shelves on the 18th of September 1995, entering the UK chart at number 8. By this point, Robbie France had left the group. replaced by temp drummer Louis, before drafting in former Little Angels percussionist Mark Richardson. I went up to these guys at the Kerrang Awards and said, "Hey, your drummer's crap. I'm really good. Let me do it." It worked out. After the release of the album, the band managed to get themselves some prime support slots, with the likes of Lenny Kravitz, Bon Jovi, and the reformed Sex Pistols, further expanding their fanbase. Weak would be released in January 1996, and become the group's first top 20 single. It would also be their second appearance on Top of the Pops, having previously accompanied Björk for a remix version of Army of Me. Initially though, One Little Independent were hesitant to release another Skunk Anansie single. Their perceived awkwardness and uncommerciality not worth the money, unwilling to pay for Week's music video, even though MTV were more than willing to support the group. Eventually the video was made between dates on their US tour, shot spur of the moment in an airport car park. Despite the label's indifference, Paranoid and Sunburnt would eventually go platinum in the UK in August 1998. The US had issues latching on to Skunk Anansie wholesale. Their appearance in the Catherine Bigelow sci-fi Strange Days had helped get their faces somewhat known. But while New York, Los Angeles and San Francisco gave them the time of day, Middle America at large wasn't going to warm to a rock band with a black, bisexual, female lead singer. At the time, genre lines were drawn up around race, so much so that when the band first started meeting with US labels, they were constantly diverted towards the urban music division, the ghettoization of black artists that made traditionally black music like R&B, hip-hop, soul and funk. Though they loved and respected that kind of music, that wasn't Skunk Anansie. They were a rock band. America wasn't going to accept a diverse rock act. We could feel it. Everywhere we went, in every record shop, in every town in the US, our album would be in the R&B section instead of rock, just because there were two black faces in the band. Back in the UK, Skunk Anansie was seen as the heavy-grooved hard rock group that they were, though they initially had flirtations with the NME and Melody Maker, willing to let them into the indie Britpop bubble. Kerrang claimed them for the overarching Brit rock movement, alongside the up-and-coming likes of Therapy, Wild Hearts, Ash, Terrorvision, Reef, Feeder, and Free Colours Red. Brit rock was a way to market this influx of hard-rocking British music, and get the readers hyped for a homegrown movement, similar to the way that other music weeklies had fanned the flames for Britpop in the years previous. And straight away they were accepted into the rockers' embrace. At the 1995 Kerrang Awards, Skunk Anansie would win Best British Newcomers, and in '96 they would win Best Live Band. But over the next 3 years, Skunk Anansie would outgrow the label, becoming way bigger than any of their Brit rock peers. You could call our first album directionless, but we got away with it. You can put a soul song next to a heavy rock song, and who gives a fuck? We're very strong about what we are, and we stick to that. Skunk Anansie would follow up Paranoid and Sunburnt with Stoosh in late 1996, generating their biggest hit yet with the ballad Hedonism, Just Because You Feel Good.
Just because you feel good.
It was written years previous, inspired by Skin's first big heartbreak, with a girlfriend who had been cheating on her.
I hope you're feeling happy now. I see you feel no pain at all it seems.
I brought it to the guys and they were like, "It's great, but where's the chorus? You gotta sum it up." So that's where Just Because You Feel Good came from.
Just because you feel good.
It came really quickly and was written in about 5 minutes, but it came from a deep dark place of being badly dumped for the first time. I never let it happen like that again, but I thank her very much for the song. The song did little for their US presence, as MTV limited play of its music video due to featuring a tongue kiss between two women. Stoosh would take some influence from the world of electronica, with loops and synth augments, which would carry over onto their 1999 album, Post-Orgasmic Chill. At the same time, the world of electronica was taking from Skunk Anansie. The Prodigy sampled Selling Jesus on their Fat of the Land track, Serial Thriller. Skunk Anansie were now a global presence, huge in Europe, and in July 1998, even being invited to play at Nelson Mandela's 80th birthday celebrations. Standing out again, a rock band amongst a sea of R&B artists, wedged between Chaka Khan and Stevie Wonder. The only concession to their set was that Skin decided not to open with the storming "Yes, it's fucking political."
Yes, it's fucking political. Everything's political.
Due to not wanting to continuously scream "fucking" in front of the South African president. But by 1999, due to relentless touring, 11 top 40 singles, and 2 platinum albums, Skunk Anansie had become one of the biggest bands in Britain, getting to the point where they headlined Glastonbury alongside R.E.M. and Manic Street Preachers. As such, Skin became the first black female musician and the first black British frontperson to do so, a claim that's since been erroneously attached to Beyoncé and Stormzy respectively. Skin would push back, reclaiming her role in Pyramid Stage history. If I'm really honest, I was way more irritated when Beyoncé said she was the first black woman. I really like Stormzy and think he does a lot of good. I would never tear that guy down, and I would never start a beef and take that moment away from him, but I had to stick up for myself. Skunk Anansie would split in 2001. Since then, their music has paved the way for many, from black musicians wanting to take up the mantle of rock music, LGBTQ+ musicians who want to form bands, or even groups like Royal Blood and Maneskin, whose groove-heavy hard rock carry the hallmarks of Skunk Anansie. Not only that, but Weak has become an unshakable empowerment anthem, alongside 90s staples such as You Ought to Know,
And I'm here to remind you of the mess you left.
Khaleesi's Caught Out There,
I hate you so much right now. I hate you so much right now.
or Hole's Violet.
Go on, take everything I want you to.
Former Faces frontman Rod Stewart even covered it in 1998.
Weak as I am, no chance for you.
All this when at the time the band were forever struggling to make themselves heard, Skin defiantly screaming at anyone who'd listen. The music industry and the establishment has never really warmed to my band, but those kind of things never really bothered us, because our politics and what we had to say was always in the music. That was more important to us. The band would reform in 2009, and since then they've continued to rock in their own particular tenacious manner, and 25 years later their songs are still just as relevant. No band got anywhere by being exactly like everyone else, and Skunk Anansie proved that. We were outsiders, and we still are. We're a people band, and the people love us. Do you feel like you're running out of ideas? Feel like every time you attempt something new, it's like hitting a brick wall, and you just can't find a way to get over it? Well then, Skillshare may be the service for you. Skillshare is an online learning community for anyone who wants to learn something new, where millions have come together to take the next step in their creative journey. This month I watched Brine Time, Pickle Like a Pro. In it, Travis Grillo leads you through the fun, creative and delicious process of home pickling. But maybe you want some meatballs to go with those pickles. With Daniel Holtzman's Show Us Your Balls meatball making with the Meatball Shop, that is also an option. Today is the perfect time to do that thing you always wanted to do. The first 1,000 people who use the link in my description will receive a 1-month free trial to Skillshare Premium. So click that link, acquire a new skill and become a better you. Thanks for watching. Who is your favourite Brit rock group? Comment down below, and why don't you like, subscribe and hit that bell. Shout out to my new top tier supporters: Ian, Ryan McMichael, Laluri, 22 Black, Christopher Plummer, Smoking Nick Crow and Christopher Moran. Thanks a bunch, and I'll see you in 2 weeks for a trip back to the 80s.